Okay, good afternoon. My name is Chris Velasquez. I'm the police chief for the city of Lake Wales. Today I'm going to brief about an incident. It's an officer-involved shooting, and I'm going to give you the information that we have at this time. This is extremely live at this time, and we still have a lot of investigation that has to occur. What began this morning as a horrific case of domestic violence ended this morning, unfortunately, with the loss of a police officer's K-9, Max, that you see here today, and the death of a suspect who shot him. At approximately 5 o'clock this morning, 5:06 a.m., we received a call from the Emergency Communications Center of a domestic violence incident. We're going to play that 911 call for you now.
05:07:59 seconds, August 3, 2022.
911. Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, I need police out here. A guy that I was dating, he dragged me on the road, and hit my head on the road for a minute. What is the address? And now he's out here shooting with a gun. 43 Western. Get down! Okay, helping me to stay on the line while I get more information for the responders. Yes, ma'am. Get down, you! Did you say he as a boy? Yes, ma'am. What is that called? Get down! And tell me exactly what happened, ma'am. Ma'am, okay, I actually dropped me off at home. Then he touched me, and then he pulled me out of his car, and dragged me out of his car, banged my head on those cement, and then he showed up back at my house and said, I'm going to get in more trouble than he is, and then he stepped out, pop, 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 pop.
So what you heard was the victim saying that the suspect, pulled her out of the vehicle, beat her head on the ground, on the concrete, and choked her, and also had a firearm, and was outside and had shot the firearm. Officers responded to the scene, and the suspect had left the scene. He had left the area. A short period later, the subject returned to the same general area. We don't know why he came back. All we know is that he was armed with a handgun at the time when he left, and that he was returning. When officers attempted to intervene and apprehend the subject, he ran and fled. He ran into a wooded area alongside a railroad track. When he did that, the officers from the Lake Wales Police Department, and we also called for assistance from the Sheriff's Office, we set up a perimeter. Officer Jared Joyner, and his K-9 partner Max, which I showed you that picture earlier, along with a backup officer, began a track. That track ultimately led them to the suspect. The suspect was hiding in a wooded area. The K-9 identified and apprehended the subject. He engaged with the subject. The officers immediately began telling him to show his hands, show his hands, show his hands, multiple times. The subject did not show his hands. He did not cooperate. I'm going to show you a small frame of our body camera, and it's a frame of the suspect pointing a gun, later determined to be stolen, at our K-9. And you also see where we pointed out that the gases from the firearm were being expelled as the suspect shot and killed and murdered our police K-9. Stolen gun, convicted felon, murdered a police dog, didn't cooperate with the officers, and didn't do what he was told, and he was ultimately shot and killed by my officers. Here's our suspect, 57-year-old Ernest Borders, 57 years old enough to know better. Let's talk about Ernest Borders. He has 24 prior charges, felony charges, 4 misdemeanor charges, 18 felony convictions. Served time in Florida State Prison 3 times. Charges include possession of a weapon by a convicted felon, imagine that, battery, assault, grand theft, numerous failures to appear in court, and the list goes on, all the way down to driving with a suspended driver's license. Let's talk more about the officer, though, and the K-9 who lost their life today. K-9 Officer Joyner lost a part of his family today. Our K-9 partners live with and stay with the officers at their homes. They're part of their family. K-9 Max was 7 years old. He's a Belgian Malinois. And he had been part of the family for seven years. Officer Joyner, he's an 11-year veteran of the police department. This officer is extremely distraught. He's heartbroken, and so are we. You know, this dog did exactly what he was trained to do. He was very, very well trained. He performed exactly as he was supposed to. And he ultimately saved the lives of police officers this morning. I fully, wholeheartedly believe that we'd be up here speaking about dead police officers had that K-9 not been in service this morning. This investigation, again, is extremely active. The information that we provided to you this morning or this afternoon, is what we have and what we can release. There are a number of different investigations that are going to occur. I've requested Sheriff Judd in the Polk County Sheriff's Office to conduct the shooting investigation. It's standard for us to do that. It's a lot of resources that it takes to do one of these investigations, to conduct one of these. So the Sheriff's Office is conducting a criminal investigation into the homicide. We're going to have the State Attorney's Office conducting an investigation as well. The Medical Examiner's Office will be conducting a death investigation and doing the medical examiner report. And we're also going to conduct an internal investigation here to look at our policies. At this time, the information I gave you is what we have. We're not going to release body camera video right now. I'm not going to show a police dog getting shot and killed and a suspect getting shot and killed on video. But once this investigation wraps up, we'll release more information, and more of that will likely be available for you. At this time, I'd just like to thank the community for the support. I'd like to thank the officers for the job that they do each and every day. I'd like to thank the K-9 handlers for the sacrifices that they give and make every single day. You know, this is really a very difficult situation for us, and it's even a more difficult situation for Officer Joyner and the officers that were involved in this shooting this morning. Ultimately, someone else lost their life. The suspect lost his life too. He made that choice, and that's why he's dead today. That's all there is to it. He made that choice, but he also has family members too, and we feel for that family member too, because they had nothing to do with this.
Chief, at what point of the encounter did the police dog, at what point of the encounter was the police dog fired upon?
As soon as the dog apprehended the subject, the dog alerted to the subject inside the wooded area and entered into the wooded area. And as soon as he did, he engaged the subject. And from what we can tell, again, initially, he had a hold of the suspect's foot, ankle, leg area. And that's the point where the subject reached up and fired and shot and killed our K-9.
Do you believe the officers were fired upon as well, and that's why the return fire happened?
We don't know that, but number one, when you have a subject that's armed, that's committed violent crimes, as he already has this morning, he had a gun. He had already been reported to have fired shots. He didn't comply with the officers, and he had a handgun in his hand. When the officers told him to put it down, he's going to get shot. Every time.
Did he have a criminal record?
He did, yes ma'am. The criminal record, we'll issue a press release, we'll give that out, and it's got more of the detailed information, but again, just I had touched on that earlier, 24 prior felonies, a number of misdemeanors, and then some other charges too.
Chief, are you sure that there wasn't Lieutenant of prison.
Yes.
Chief, are you sure that there wasn't any crossfire or anything, that this may have been friendly fire? Was it absolutely that the suspect here is the one that shot the dog?
At this time, we feel very confident with what we have and what we've seen, that the suspect flat completely murdered our K-9. Pulled the handgun out, pointed it at the dog, and pulled the trigger.
Chief, is this the first time your departments have to go through something like this, and how do you cope with it?
We've been involved in other significant incidents over the years, officer-involved shootings, tragedies of officers losing loved ones, family members, whatever, just life, like everybody else has to go through. So we've experienced troubles, and we've experienced really rough times before. How are we dealing with it? Well, we're dealing with it by talking to each other. We're a family. We take care of each other, and we do everything we can to make sure that our brothers and sisters are taken care of. We reach out. We have chaplains. We have a CISM team, a critical incident team that helps us, and we all work together on this team. And at times like this, we use those resources to help, because everybody has to talk about what they're feeling and what they're going through. It's a very traumatic situation for us to go through, and for the officers, for all the people involved. Not a single one of these officers started their day expecting it to end the way it's ended so far.
Chief,
Not
how
one
many
person.
actually fired shots, and what's their status now, please? How many officers actually fired shots, and what's their status now?
Two officers fired, and both subject officers, both of the officers at this time are going to be placed on administrative leave. It's standard protocol. It's to make sure that they're okay and that they get any kind of help that they need. So they'll be on administrative leave until further notice, until the investigation progresses, and they're ready to come back. They're not going to come back until they're ready to come back.
Sheriff Judd, Sheriff Judd, I'm sure you have some thoughts. As you watched this scene unfold, we saw you standing there with the vehicles going by, and you knew in that first vehicle was one of your officers here in Polk County, and the dog was in the vehicle. What was that moment like for you? You've seen a lot of it, but this is still tough.
Well, it crushes you, because that K-9 died so the police officers wouldn't. So one of the officers, the K-9 officer, died in this shootout this morning. He was the tip of the spear. He was the one sent in to protect the officers while they attempted to arrest a man who had been actively shooting after he committed a violent domestic violence. And what we lost today was one of our partners. Our K-9 Max died so no Lake Wales police officers would in that thick, overgrown, wooded area where ultimately the shooting took place.
Chief, do you know what he was firing at when he was firing his gun before? Was he just shooting in the air, at a building, at a person?
We don't know. We don't know the answer to that at this time. I know that the detectives, the last time I was updated, they had recovered 9 cases from that area where the original shooting began. So this guy fired at least 9 rounds in a public housing area where we have families with good people, children. Just recklessly fired at least 9 rounds that we know of. I'd like to introduce Reverend J.J. Pierce. He's one of our partners. He's one of our police chaplains. He's a dear friend of mine. And after he speaks for just a brief couple of minutes, I'd also like to ask Norvell Peterson, a dear friend of mine, also a community member, a longstanding community member with a lot of law enforcement experience from the Polk County Sheriff's Office, to also say a word if he'd like. Reverend Pierce.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, I am Reverend J.J. Pierce, and I am deeply moved by what has happened. There's sadness on both sides, of course, and for them to have to deal with what they had to deal with. The department of loss suffered a loss, those who were involved are hurting, broken, and bruised, and those of the family, as the chief said, who had nothing to do with this, are also hurting and are distraught. So our prayers are for all of those that are involved. But I was very concerned about meeting with our chief of police and our sheriff, Greater Judd, because I understand that the public will jump to their own conclusions, and then it will be reflected in social media and et cetera. And also knew that they will come to me to ask me various questions as one of the leaders of the community. And I wanted to be able to share with them what I understood the facts to be at this early stage. And so I went to Sheriff Greater Judd and to our Chief Velasquez and asked them if they would meet with me and share with me what they could on these early facts. And I can tell you that what they shared with us today was the very thing that they're sharing with you now. And they are right on target. Everything that I'm hearing is what I heard in an early meeting. And I wanted that to happen because I wanted myself and other community leaders to become, if you will, fire extinguishers to some of the rumors that will come forth, rather than arsonists. We want to be those who will go about helping to put out fires rather than setting fires. But in order to do that, we needed to know the facts as much as we could. And so they sat down with us, and in fact, he asked me if I would contact some of the community leaders of our community to meet with them even before they meet with the media, so that they will have that information as factual as they have it themselves. And so I got on the phone and I called the various ones, and at that meeting today was Dr. Scott Markley of the First Baptist Church downtown, the Reverend Ralph Roberts, who was president of the Ministerial Alliance here in Lake Wales, Bishop Bobby Banks, and Pastor Cheryl Larkin, and also Reverend Tim Nunez, of the Church of Good Shepherd, and Reverend Marquet Smith, First Presbyterian Church pastor, Bishop Roscoe William, and Reverend Danny William of the Great St. Thomas Holiness Church, and Brother Norvell Peterson, who's at my side, and Brother Troy Shokes, as well as Reverend Barry Wooten of First Baptist Church downtown. And we all came, and they shared with us those facts as they know. We realize that it's still fluid, realize it's still ongoing, the investigation is, but they was transparent with us, and that's what we wanted them to be, and they was forthcoming and shared us the facts that I just heard them share with the media here today. And I appreciate them doing that, and we look forward to continue to update as we move forward and working together as a community and bring about healing in our neighborhoods and community in our city. So thank you so very much.
Reverend, if I may, before you step away, was what you saw something that you would share with the community and say that at this point, at least early on, that this seems to be above board, so to speak, to quash those rumors, as you said, on social media?
Absolutely, yes. It's certainly been on point. It's the very same thing they shared with you is what they shared with us. And that's what I believe to be the truth based on the evidence that they have on hand.
So your message to those folks would be what?
Yeah, well, my message will be to just kind of cool it, take it easy, be in prayer for all involved, and give the law enforcement the opportunity to complete their investigation. And certainly they will be updating us as they move forth And as chaplain of the police department, certainly I will be here to gather information that they will receive, that I receive from them, and will share with the community as well. Thank you.
My name is Norvell Peterson, was born and raised here in Lake Wells. I got involved with the community because I had a great concern about the welfare of my community. And I really appreciate the chief as well as the sheriff coming over to fill the community in, as Reverend Pierce say. So many times we hear rumors, and I don't want to go back in my community and spread rumors that it wasn't facts. And I'm gonna be brief, but I do it's concerned with the growth and the whereabouts of all our people. And I really sympathize with the family as well as the police department. I've been in law enforcement somewhat 50 years, and I just have a hurt for the family in law enforcement, because they are my family. All of them are my family, and you know, I really feel hurt today because my family is hurting. Thank you.
Chief, I had one extra question just to clarify. Are you able to say whether Officer Joyner was one of the officers who fired at the suspect?
He absolutely was.
Did he say anything about doing that? I mean, that's his partner.
No, ma'am.
Chief, responding to domestic violence, you say is one of the most dangerous calls you guys did. Can you talk a little bit about that, just the results of what happened today?
Many times domestic violence is a progressive disease, a progressive crime, a progressive situation that just continually gets worse. I don't know all of the background on our suspect and what he had done previously with the victim in this case, or what their history was, but I'd very likely, I'd say that this was a progression, and that it didn't just start overnight. He didn't just decide to pull her out of the car and beat her head on the concrete and choke her and then pull out a firearm and just start shooting. Something was going on, and I think it's very important. You know, we've seen domestic violence situations turn deadly over the years. If they're not deadly, they could very likely just destroy a family or destroy a child's happiness, their well-being. You've got to stop it somehow. You've got to stop the cycle, and that's why it's very important, just like the victim did in this case, that they call if they need help, and if they're a victim of domestic violence, they've got to call. You don't deserve that. Nobody does. And they need to ask, and we'll help them. We'll do everything we can to help them. Is there anything else? I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming today, and again for all your support. As we have more updates and information, we'll release that. But at this time, this will be our statement and the information that we'll be releasing today. Have a great day.
Thank you.